Hi, this is Krista Moore with The Krista Moore Show, and I'm doing a special edition of the show today because I've met a new friend, and I happen to be down at the Chowan River, staying at another friend's house, and you just have some wonderful stories to share, and I find you fascinating, and I would like for all of you to meet her. Her name is Hannah Patel, and I'm going to, like I said, these are my questions. I don't have any. I just want to have a good conversation, learn more about you, and I would love for you to tell the story that others have heard that I have not heard yet about Billy Graham and the history of within your family. So why don't you start out telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from? Let us get to know you.
I'm from India, from a town, from a city actually called Pune, which is in the state of Maharashtra. It is from the western part of India. And yes, that's where I was born and that's where I grew up. And I'm here in the US. Actually, this is my second trip, second visit. First time I was here, I met a lot of people. And this year, my daughter's married here to a very wonderful person. And I'm just here to make it a little easier for her to get used to the life in the US, which is so much more different than in India.
I would love.
It's way different. It's way different.
Let's talk about that just a little bit. So I'm trying to think as a mother, having my only child, let's say, because I know she's an only child, going from the US to India or vice versa, and not being there every day to help and support her and nurture her and make sure she's okay. And I'm wondering how the two of you manage that.
This question has been asked to me a number of times, even by my son-in-law himself. He also asked me this, and he was when he first started dating her, he asked me, how do you feel about your daughter, I mean your only child, going so far away, thousands of miles away? So I just had one answer to give him. I said, if that is the Lord's calling for her in her life, who am I to stand in the way of the Lord?
That's right.
He will take her wherever he wants to take her. And sure enough, we did put the fleece before the Lord and said, if this is the Lord's will, it will happen. And there were so many obstacles and there were so many issues. But believe it or not, Krista, it was, I mean, the door started opening one by one. It was such a miracle.
And then you knew it was meant to be.
And one example I'll give you, if time permits.
Sure.
Is getting a visa even to visit the US is very tough.
Yes.
And especially for my daughter, because she's very young, unmarried. She didn't have a job of her own. Of course, she had a couple of companies there and she was doing that. But for the US Embassy, that means she's going to settle down in the US and she's not going to come back.
Yes.
So it was very difficult. So my mother's a woman of prayer. She prayed. I prayed. I said, Lord, if this is your will for her to get married to Conley,
yes,
you will open the door. And we walked in for the interview. In just a minute and a half, they just asked us about 4 or 5 questions. And the consular officer, she said, your visa's approved.
Isn't that wonderful?
Oh, we just couldn't believe it. And then when we went back home, this is in another city.
Yes.
And we went back home, nobody was able to believe it. They said, how did it happen? They said, we can understand, because you are working, you are established. But Kezia,
at her age,
no.
And
they said
they knew that she was here to stay if she was coming.
They knew that this is a miracle. It has to be from the Lord.
That's wonderful.
No other way at all.
Well, there's another piece of that story that I really want to share with the listeners, and it has to do with what you mentioned earlier about she's the 4th generation.
Yes.
So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this being what the Lord has planned for her because of the generational family situation that you have.
There is a story in the family. Would you like to hear that one?
Let's hear the story first.
Okay.
And
because
then
this is
it'll make sense, right?
This is directly related to that.
Now, I haven't heard this story before, but I've heard some of it. And I do know that when you shared this story on Facebook, you got a tremendous amount of sharing and likes and a lot of attention from the US. and others want to hear this story. So this is another reason why we wanted to record it.
Yes. I would say the Lord's ways are so amazing. Let me just say by saying that when you sow a seed, the seed has to die. It remains buried. The tree may come up, but when the fruits come, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even know that you had planted a seed or somebody else had planted the seed. Generally, the person who plants the seed does not eat the fruits of it. It's somebody else, the next
Yes,
generation
next
that
generation.
gets it. So the story is about my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
So when it starts with him, my daughter gets she's the fourth generation. So we had a evangelist coming from the US. That was Billy Graham, and he came to the south of India. This was in the early 50s.
Early 50s.
Early 50s. I think that was about the time when Billy Graham first started coming to India. And he came to the state of Kerala, from where my mother is. Majority of my family is there. And he came and he wanted to hold a crusade, a revival meeting. There wasn't any land.
In India. I mean,
In
I'm just picturing this in the 50s. This
Yes.
must have been a tremendous opportunity, not only to, see him in person, but just to have him go that far for
Yes.
probably one of the first
Yes.
crusades.
Yes, probably it was the first among the first
Yes.
crusades. So he went to Kerala, and he did not have land to hold his crusade. And I don't know how it came about, but my grandfather, that's my mom's dad, he was a farmer and he had 9 children. And what he sowed, the crops, was more to feed his family than to trade or sell. But he was a man of faith. And from what my mom tells me, they used to get up every day in the morning listening to him singing songs of praise. That was their alarm to wake up in the morning.
Your
And
grandfather
my
was
grandfather,
singing.
yes. Just to wake up all the children, he would sing loudly, the gospel songs. And that's the first thing they would hear in the morning. So anyway, there wasn't any land available for Billy Graham. My grandfather, he had already sowed the crops on the field, but somehow I think the Lord must have spoken to him. And just to make land available for Billy Graham, he uprooted his field. The field was about half grown. It was not ready
What
to be
was he
harvested. Rice. Right. Sorry. I'm sorry. It's not rice. It is a kind of a root potato, which is called tapioca.
Okay.
Tapioca. Yeah. So it's like a sweet potato, kind of, but it's longer and it's not sweet. It's it's got a lot of fiber in it. It's called tapioca. So it was about maybe could have been 2 or 3 feet high, and it is only harvested when it is about 5 or 6 feet high. And then you
he uprooted his harvest.
So he uprooted the entire harvest. The entire field was uprooted. He leveled it and he made it available for Billy Graham to hold his crusade. And my grandfather, as my mother says, she never gave it a thought what he's going to feed his 9 children for the rest of the year. He did not bother about it. All he knew was he had to make the land available for the man of God. That's all.
Beautiful.
And my mother's brother, older brother, had the opportunity to translate for Billy Graham in that crusade from English to the local language, the regional language. Then my grandmother, she cooked for Billy Graham, and she was a village woman. She never has been out of a village at all. She cooked for him food that is like Western flavors, American flavors, which she knew nothing about.
She knew nothing about.
Nothing at all. She learned. She said, my mom says it was just the Holy Spirit that was guiding her.
That's wonderful.
So Billy Graham was able to eat the food. Otherwise, it's very difficult to eat Indian food. It's full of spices for somebody who's not used to it.
How many people were there? Do you know? The crusade?
No. And if he's uprooted an entire field, and there must have been a huge amount of people, huge turnout.
I would imagine.
And definitely for Billy Graham, he just pulls crowds. He used to do that. And so this story, I knew about it. My mother used to tell me, but I didn't give it much thought. But when Billy Graham died, and that is when I shared this story on Facebook, it was just an expression of, showing that somewhere we had some connection to
connection,
Billy
yes.
Graham. But the response that I got for it from all my friends in the US was amazing.
Yeah.
And last visit when I was here, I was asked to share this so often. Every time we went out with the rest of the family for dinner or to church, wherever, they wanted to hear all about it. And yes, you were asking me about the generational blessings, right?
Well, I'm curious too, after the crusade, what generational blessings did you receive?
Yes. Krista, the scripture says that the blessings will follow from generation to generation. Usually it is said at least up to the fourth generation. If it's a curse, it follows up to the fourth, unless you break it in the name of the Lord. Or the blessings.
Yes.
It was about I think about must have been 4 weeks ago when I was just talking to my daughter. She is being challenged. I mean, she finds it difficult to adjust. She's just come into the country. She's adjusting. So when it was one of her low times, I was just encouraging her. And believe it or not, it occurred to me at that point. I think
it wasn't something you thought about.
No, I never
before.
thought about it before. But I'm sure it is the Lord that was talking. I told her, I said, her name is Kezia. I said, Kezia, from the entire family, God has picked you up to bring you into the land, into the state that belongs to Billy Graham. I said, you're just 5 hours away. I didn't know how many hours that was. I thought you're a few hours away from Charlotte. Same state. I told her it is the same state from where Billy Graham is. I said, can you imagine? Lord had a plan and purpose for you. So what was sown 4 generations ago is bearing fruit in your life.
Yes.
So be careful of the blessings that God has given you. Hold it. It's very precious. Nurture it and let it grow in your life. So I believe that is a generational blessing I was talking about. And
how wonderful to be connected and aware that that is even existing. I think that there's so many people that go through life, even faithful people, that don't see that. They don't make that connection or realize that it is a true blessing and it is a gift. And what can we now do with this gift?
Right. You have that. I mean, that's a responsibility which the Lord places on you. He gives us the gift, and what do we do with it? Is our response to Him. And yes, I would like to see that my daughter and her husband serve the Lord in some capacity or other, to just take it forward.
Yeah.
Because that is an amazing blessing to have in your life. And that is my deepest desire, that together they serve the Lord somewhere. In whatever capacity they can, they should be able to.
And I don't know the story of how they met, but it was based on serving the Lord, because he was over there on a mission trip. Is that
right?
That's
right. That is
and they
correct.
met in church?
Yes, they met in church. And they met in church. And I believe Carly he was not actively looking for a bride, but as soon as he walked into a church and he saw her, he knew
They fell in love.
going to visit. And there's another story behind that. That's what Conley told me a number of times.
I'd love to hear it.
Yes, not really a story, but it was prophesied to him that on this trip, he's going to meet his wife. I don't know who told him that.
He felt that in his heart.
Yeah, I think somebody told him to. Somebody also told him that he is going to meet his wife, and I guess he kept himself open to the Lord.
Yes.
And
then it happened instantly.
That it happened instantly.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's a great story. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. And I just would like to ask you a couple of questions about kind of the differences in us, right? We're both 2 years apart. I grew up in a small coal mining town in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
My parents owned...
Oh, that reminds me, the Amish are there. right?
Yes, the Amish are
I
there.
want to visit an Amish settlement.
Yeah, oh, we'll take you to see an Amish
Thank
settlement.
you.
Yeah, there's one actually near my hometown that still exists today. There's
Okay.
little shops and stores we can
Okay.
go in and farms. I'd love to take you
I
there.
would love to go there.
Yeah. But this coal mining town, there were row houses and a company store and a tavern, and we lived above the tavern. And that was my upbringing. And
Okay.
we always went to church every Sunday. We sang in the choir. You know, God was an important part of our upbringing as well. And I'm wondering, here you are on the other side of the world, similar time in the 60s, a little girl, and we teach a lot about the 10-year-old self and things, but I'm just curious if you could share some of your experiences, you know, from your culture, what was happening in the 50s and 60s and 70s.
In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, India, if you talk about it commercially, it had not opened up to world trade.
That's right.
There were many things that were not available to us in India. And when our friends used to go abroad or some family member, most of the Indians used to have a long list for them to get things back from the maybe US or any other country could be. But I think it was in the 80s that India opened up to world trade.
Yes.
And now it's almost like
there's big cities
it's
just
one
like the
big
US.
global village everywhere, you know.
Isn't that interesting?
So yeah, there were many things that we went without in the 60s, but we never missed them.
You didn't
because
know
we didn't
what
know
you didn't.
anything else.
Yeah, you didn't know what you didn't know. Is what you always say.
Yes, that's it. So what you didn't know, you didn't know.
Yeah, and actually, growing up, we were extremely poor, and I didn't know that. But and we never felt that. We always had love in the family and love in the household, but we didn't have everything that others did.
True.
But it didn't matter.
It didn't matter because you just didn't know any better.
You know, I'm always curious too about kind of equal rights and things like that. With women here in the United States, there's always this still a fight for equality. And my perception is that it's even more difficult outside of the United States and in many countries and perhaps India for kind of that fight for equality. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, you are right. It may not be as blatant now, but it is there in an overt kind of way. And yes, it definitely is there. There's a gender inequality that is there. Male supremacy is there a huge,
and
in a
culturally,
big way.
that's
Culturally,
difficult to change.
It's very difficult to change. But in the families that are more educated or the more upwardly mobile, they try to inculcate it. But then what is ingrained into the culture from generations is difficult to get rid of.
Well, and I noticed when we first met how well you speak English, and I was a little surprised that that was your first language.
Yes.
And that's just what was taught in the schools that you attended, right?
So thank you for the compliment. But yes, in India, there are the schools could teach you the entire syllabus, the entire course, right from your playgroup till you graduate, could be taught through the medium, the English medium of teaching would be English. Sorry, English.
And it's British English.
British English, and or it could be any one of the regional language or the national language, that is Hindi, or it could be the local languages. But those who choose to go to, or to send their children to the schools that use the medium as English, they speak very good English. And this legacy comes to us from the British.
Yes.
Because the British people ruled over India for hundreds of years. So that legacy still carries forward. And most of our words, the way we pronounce our words, many of the words are way different from the way the Americans do it. For example, we always used to have an issue with
the Z.
Z. Yes. Z, yes. Z. The last alphabet is Z. For us, it's Z. For you, it's Z. It is Z. And also, like, we would say via email. You would say via email. These are the few of the differences, which is very obvious. But many of the words said very differently. So we speak English, the Americans speak English, but we still do not understand it so easily.
Yeah, I was very impressed with that, just so you know.
Yeah. So yeah, the words and spellings, pronunciations are influenced by the British.
So with your experiences in growing up in India, like let's say from childhood on, tell me a little bit about your life, about the experiences, maybe highs and lows, just what would be something that a story you could share that was very memorable for you.
Memorable, I don't know, but yeah, I would say that as a child growing up, in India we earlier at least, and we still do to some extent have joint families, where the grandparents, the sons' wives, you know, and their children, everybody. Even if there are
Everybody's
two or
living
three
together.
sons in the family, all the wives of all the sons and all the children, all the cousins, they all live together and they grow up together as siblings, brothers and sisters. So there's a huge support system. And
Family
now
would be kind of
family is
at
a
the
big
core
thing.
of
It's a big
everything.
thing. Yes,
Yeah.
in India, family is a big thing.
Is that changing today?
Yes, it is. It is. There are, I mean, the families are more nuclear families now. That's because most other families are moving away to other cities
Yeah.
because of jobs. Earlier in India, this was unheard of. Like in the US, you go from one city to the other if your job takes you there, or if you're changing your job. You know, you can just uproot yourself. And in India, it was not possible earlier.
Well, this makes sense too when I think about your daughter and family being the nucleus and always having family around as a support system. And now you're not able to provide that the way that you would want to because she's so far away.
Yes.
That would be difficult for a mom.
Yes, it would be very difficult because as a mother, I just want my child, my daughter to be happy. That's it.
When our
Nothing
kids are
beyond that.
happy,
Yes,
we're
we are
happy.
happy.
That's so true, no matter what age they
yes,
are.
and the man that she's married to, he's a very good man. Conley is very, very good. He's really a very nice person. My daughter is very kind. She's very generous and very intelligent. She has her moments, her challenges, but I don't know how she's going to cope. But I know deep within me, I know that she's strong. She's strong and she gets her strength from me.
And I think too, keeping that faith and really understanding that it is an opportunity and a gift from God that she is here and in the same state, and that this fourth, I love that story, and that should give her what she needs, the strength.
I think so too.
You know, to play this out.
Right.
What is she here for?
She's been brought up in the church from the childhood. My mother was very instrumental. My mother stays with me because my father.
How old is she?
She is 79. She was 79 in April this year, and yeah, she's on 80 now. So she brought her up with a lot of stories from the Bible. All her bedtime stories used to be that. So Kezia is very well versed with the Bible. She knows practically in and out everything about it. She's been born and brought up in the church. That is what you could tell about Kezia. All the teachings and everything is there. So she's a strong Christian, and yes, she will find her faith and she'll find her way to help her. I'm sure about it.
Okay.
She will. She's just too young. I mean, by American standards, I would say 23, they say, is not too young. But by Indian standards, it is young.
Yes.
Because in India, especially, the girls are sheltered. They are very protected. I mean, they are not, the parents don't let them go out till so late in the night. And some of it is changing, the culture. The girls are out, but most of the families would not let the girls be out till very late in the night or go out by themselves. Another reason for that is the security issues in India.
Yes.
A girl is not really safe, you know. Of course, also here too, no doubt about it. It's not just a girl, but also a boy. But yeah.
But it's protection.
It is protection.
Definitely protection.
Just wanting to keep your child safe.
Yeah.
To an extent that whenever she used to go out with her friends for a party or something, I had it drilled into her head. She will not let anyone get her a drink. She will go and get her own drink. She will not leave it on the table.
That's right.
If she leaves
That's the
it, she's
biggest
not going
mistake
to
that they're
pick it
gonna
up
make.
again. Yeah, I said
Mhm.
if she leaves it some on the table and goes somewhere, she's not to pick up the same drink and drink it. She will just leave it there, or she'll go and buy her own.
Well, I don't think
She'd never do that.
that people realize that what a big deal that is.
It is.
Because it's prominent on college campuses
Right.
around here and in big cities. I remember when I was in my 20s, someone put something in my drink once.
Oh,
It's
they did?
dangerous. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the second rule I put for her was we use a lot of cabs back
Mhm.
home. So I told her every time she travels by cab, she has to make it a point to tell me the cab number, the registration number of the cab, and the name of the driver loud enough for the driver to hear. So he
knows someone
she's
else has
talking,
it.
yes, is monitoring.
That's smart.
So these two things were in place for
Yeah.
her security. That is what.
That's great. Well, I know you miss her dearly when you're away, and I know that it's your strength and your nurturing that has brought her here. And it's just a pleasure to meet you and for you to share this story with the world. And I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be talking to you, and I'm glad I got to meet you.
Yeah, let's give a hug. That sounds great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
I'll turn this off somewhere.
Mhm.
There we go. We can watch it later after
Oh, okay.
the recording works.